All right, let's jump right in. In this explainer, we're going to unpack a strategic playbook that will help you transform your security department from, just a necessary expense into a truly vital strategic partner. Let's get to it. It's the classic headache for every security pro, right? When you are doing your job perfectly, nothing happens. No break-ins, no big incidents, just silence. And while that's a huge win, it also makes it incredibly hard to show your value. So the big question is, how do you prove your worth when your greatest successes are the things that don't happen? Well, the key is a pretty fundamental shift in how you think. We're going to move away from just counting things, the number of patrols you run or intruders you catch. And instead, we're going to focus on measuring your strategic impact. It's all about learning to speak the language of business and tying your security mission directly to the company's biggest goals. And the very first tool in our playbook for speaking that language is the key performance indicator, or as you know it, the KPI. Now, this isn't just some empty corporate jargon. This is probably the single most powerful tool you have to prove in black and white the value your team is delivering every single day. This slide really nails a critical distinction. See, a metric, it's just a number. We caught 5 intruders. Okay, is that good? Is that bad? Who knows? Without context, it's meaningless. But a KPI, something like our average response time to alarms decreased by 10%, well, that tells a story. It's a story of improvement, of progress towards a bigger goal, and that is the language of business value. So let's be absolutely crystal clear on this. A KPI isn't just any number you decide to track. It is a very specific, carefully chosen measurement that is directly linked to a strategic objective. It's the thing that tells you, without a doubt, how you're progressing towards that goal. And this, right here, this is the ultimate test. For any measurement you're using, you have to ask yourself, does this number tell me if I am winning or losing? If the answer is no, it might be a helpful metric, sure, but it's not a key performance indicator. The whole point is to pick the indicators that give you that clear success or fail signal. Okay, so you need KPIs to measure what really matters. But what's the next step? You have to set the right objectives to aim for in the first place. Just saying, we need to get better, isn't a plan, it's a wish. For that, we turn to our second tool, the SMART framework. You've probably seen this before, but its power is in its clarity. A SMART goal has to be specific, leaving zero room for doubt. It has to be measurable, and hey, that's where your shiny new KPIs come in. It needs to be attainable. You want to stretch, but not break. Super important, it must be relevant to what the wider business cares about. And finally, it has to be time-bound, with a real deadline to create focus and, actual accountability. Now for our third tool. Before you can set those SMART goals or even pick the right KPIs, you need to get the lay of the land. You need that 30,000-foot view of your entire situation. And that's where a SWOT analysis comes in. It's a classic for a reason, because it just works. The SWOT matrix looks simple, but it's an incredibly powerful grid that maps out your whole landscape. It basically forces you to get brutally honest about 2 types of factors: the internal stuff that you can actually control and the external stuff that you can't. And for each of those, you identify the positives and the negatives. For example, let's look at your internal positives, your strengths. Maybe you have a fantastic, highly trained guard force. That's a huge asset you control and can leverage right away. But being honest, you probably have some internal weaknesses too. Let's say your CCTV cameras are ancient and totally unreliable. That's a vulnerability for sure. But the good news is it's within your control to fix. And just identifying it is the first step. Now we look outside the department. An external positive is an opportunity. Suddenly, you discover there's grant money available for security upgrades. Now, you don't control the grant's existence, but you can absolutely jump on that opportunity to address that whole camera weakness. And finally, an external negative is a threat, something like a rising crime rate in the area. You can't control it, but seeing it on your map forces you to create a plan to deal with it. You see how all these pieces start connecting to build your strategy? So let's bring this all home. These aren't just 3 separate ideas. They're a cohesive system, a strategic playbook where each tool feeds directly into the next one. It creates this powerful cycle of planning, acting, and then proving your value. Let's walk through the playbook using our example. So your SWOT analysis flagged old cameras as a weakness and grant money as an opportunity. That leads you to create a SMART goal. Secure grant funding to upgrade 50% of our outdated CCTV cameras by the end of Q3 to improve incident verification. And what's your KPI? Simple. You track the percentage of incidents verified by video with the goal of increasing it from, say, 20% to 70%. That's the playbook in action, right? And this is the real endgame. When you start using this playbook, you stop having conversations about budgets and start having conversations about business impact, about risk reduction, about operational efficiency. You literally transform your security department from just another line item into a truly indispensable strategic partner. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Forget about all the metrics you're currently tracking just for a second. What is the one new key performance indicator you could start tracking tomorrow that would completely change the conversation and fundamentally change how the rest of your organization sees the incredible value of security?